We're going to learn how to store the rigid body dynamics results as keyframe data. So one of the cool things about the rigid body system in Motion Builder is that once you have a result that you're satisfied with, you can take that result and store that as keyframe data. The cool thing about doing this is that you'll no longer need the solver to be active and you can turn it off. By doing so, you can free your system resources because your simulation data is written out as keyframes. You will end up using those keyframes and you'll still have your dynamics in the scene or the results of the dynamics in the scene without actually solving out any dynamics. Now, besides just that, doing that will store your dynamics result as keyframes so you can manipulate them using any of the F-curve tools in Motion Builder, and you can make any tweaks upon that dynamics result to really customize the results that you get. It's a really cool way of working. You basically write out your dynamics data as keyframes and manipulate those keyframes to get even better results than what the dynamic system has put out. So if you want to go about doing that, all you have to do is make sure that you have live turned off. Why do we want to turn off live? Because we want to be able to reset to the start and keep it there without having it resolve over and over again. Every time you click reset to start with live turned on, the dynamics will kick in and your object will always end up on the ground, or it'll always never begin at the start of the simulation. So turn off live, reset to start, so you can have your object be placed at the starting point of the simulation. So with that, once you have it there, make sure recording is turned on. And with the recording turned on, you can simply click on the record button in the transport controls, and now you'll be asked to create a new take or overwrite the current one. You can actually have multiple takes, so you can just create a new one, and if you want you can copy the data over. In this case we have no other data in here, so no is a good option to work with. And now all we have to do is click the play button to start the recording process. Click the play button, the dynamics will kick in. Now bear in mind you want to stop it as soon as it's done because it'll keep writing or it'll keep going on forever. Just stop it. Now we have a timeline worth 229 frames, but if you were to hit rewind and play, there you go, you have your animation in action. At this point we can turn off the solver, just set it offline, turn it off, and if you rewind and play again, there you go, your dynamics is still active, but it's not really the dynamic system that's putting this information out, it's the keyframes that are stored in. You can select the object and you'll be able to see the keys in here. I may need to reduce my range, so let me pull that in, and as we do so the keys will appear. So I'll take it to about maybe 90 frames or so. And here are the keys, and now you can manipulate those keys and do anything you want to them. You can speed them up, slow them down, make changes, and so on and so forth. Now the cool thing is, you may have noticed that even though our dynamic simulation result ran for a really long time, it only wrote a certain number of frames here. So the reason for that is because these frames, they're only written based on motion. Once your rigid body object comes to a stop, it's not going to write any more keyframes. So keyframes are only going to be recorded based on the dynamic motion. And something that comes into play is a very special property tucked away in the physics solver. It's called auto disabled and it's turned on by default, which is awesome. This is a very great tool because it'll detect if your object has come to a stop, and if it does, it'll turn off the dynamics on it. That way you don't have to keep resolving, or you wouldn't have that kind of an overhead, and simultaneously you wouldn't have to write out multiple keyframes. If we had that auto disable turned off, and if we were to record this, the object may still be jittering, so you may still capture a lot of keyframe data that you don't really need. So always keep auto disable turned on. It's a really good feature to have. So that's basically it. This is how we can basically take our dynamics data, write it out as keyframes, and now these keyframes can be manipulated anyhow you want.